Howdy y'all, this is AR Cavley. Welcome back to my channel. And today we're going to do another not so short review. As I've stated in the past, one of my favorite game companies, game creators is Paul Elliott with Zozer Games. And so today I'm going to review one that I was somewhat reluctant to get to start with, just from what I'd understood about it. And the fact that, I have have a bunch of games already. So it's, I'm reluctant to take up more room I don't have on shelves for games that I may or may not play in the near future. But today I'm going to be going over Clash of Steel. This is not a new system. It's a system that Paul has used for some of his older games, Zenobia, 43 AD, kind of his Roman and Desert Kingdoms setting. And I had Zenobia, or I have Zenobia. I've had it for a while, but I was just never able to really catch on to the game. Possibly because there was a bunch of setting, then the game, then the setting. I don't know, or possibly because the PDF didn't really have bookmarks in it, so I was not really sure where I was looking around. But this system is that mostly divorced from that setting, and I say mostly because you can see a lot of the resemblance in like the equipment, some of the skills, things like that. But I'm going to go ahead and walk through it and give you a little, give a rundown and my opinions of it at the end. All right, here is Clash of Steel, the hard copy ordered from Lulu. If you order it from Lulu and send Paul a receipt, he will send you a link for the PDF and a form. There's a form fillable character sheet too. And so here we have a pretty cool picture on front. All right, here's the introduction. Again, this is kind of designed for it's really more of a sword and sorcery kind of background. All right, it is, when I think of it, it's really a mashup of the old fighting fantasy books and maybe a little Cepheus or a Traveler mechanics thrown in. The main characteristics are very similar to what you'll find in one of those fighting fantasy books. And all of the test mechanics are 2d6 plus your attribute, relevant attribute, with a 10 or higher to succeed. There's no classes, there's no levels. Everyone knows how to fight. Or if you have a bad might score, then you will probably get beat up a lot. But you're not helpless. You can use whatever weapons and whatever armor and everything else. And it's designed to be streamlined and quick, and I think it does that pretty well. All right, we have might and fate and hits, which are really, if you're familiar with the fighting fantasy books, there are skill, luck, and hits. Might, I think, perhaps could have been named. Might kind of has a certain, it denotes a certain attributes, but might is used for everything: shooting, brawling, climbing, endurance. It says here a measure of physical strength, physical prowess. I think just for myself, prowess probably is a little broader. That would make it seem a little more in line. Fate is it's the luck. It's a little ambiguous sometimes as to when you're supposed to use fate. Do you use if you're trying to leap out of the way, is it of a boulder? Is it your luck? Is it your fate, the blessings of the god that gets you out of the way? Or is it your physical prowess that you would get out of the way? Um, so to me, the fate is a little, like I said, it's a little ambiguous exactly when to use it. And I don't guess you have to be, perfect as to exactly when to use what. But just overall, and that's nothing really on this game. I always had the same, looking at the old fighting fantasy games too. It's like, why is this fate or why is this luck and not skill? Some things I can understand better than others, but there it is. All right. Craft and learning, those are two extra skills that have been thrown in that represent, like it says, manual tasks. And I would think probably also like locking, uh, picking locks and such. And learning is your education and etiquette. Here's a quick breakdown, a quick list of all the character creation steps. And since sometimes showing is knowing, hey, I just made that up. Does that sound good? I have this whole stack is not of these guys, but these are little printouts of the character sheets that should be readable. I made this guy a little while ago, just making characters, kind of getting used to the process for this video, and just because it's kind of fun. These are my handy high school dice. I've had these since high school, and they they are still just as mean to me as they were back then. But as we go through, we make our character creation. We make our stats, make our rolls. Might 1 die 6, 5, and you re-roll ones. 6 for fate. Wow, that's what I rolled for the last guy too. All right, and hits is 2 die 6 and add 10. Wow, this guy's a stud muffin. He's got nearly maxed out on all his combat stuff. Cool. All right. Okay, craft and learning both at this point start at 1. And these attributes can expand. I'm just going to make and explain kind of as I go through. Here are fantasy races. They get every aspect of your character comes with certain bonuses or skills. So if you want to use a dwarf, these are the occupational backgrounds they could have and the racial skill they get and a bonus, a possible bonus. You don't always get those, but I'm not really big on fantasy races or anything like that. I prefer the human centric very much so, but they're easy to add in, whatever you want to do. So next step, we determine our social class by a die 6 roll. All right, 1. We have an outsider again, like gosh, just like the last guy I rolled. So this is like a vagabond or maybe a bandit, outlaw type person. So I'm just going to put outsider, and once you have that determined, each one gets a skill. Find direction. So he's good at finding his way around, probably so he can run back into the hills after he's attacked somebody. Each one of these social classes comes with a craft bonus and a learning bonus, and this is a die pool system. You roll the number of dice, and then for every 6, you increase that stat by 1. So in this case, my dice were nice to me just to prove me wrong, so they don't get any credit for it. Uh, all right, so 3 dice for craft. All right, so he does not get any craft increase. 2 dice for learning. All right, so he did not get anything for craft or dice, or for learning. All right, and he's the outsider, so as you can see, the different classes have different skills and different leanings towards craft or learning. And now the next part, we look at our past experience, and this is not, there's no necessarily, there's no prerequisites. You could start as a slave, and maybe your character's story is, that he came up as a palace guard or something like that. Um, so he came as an outsider. That guy, my last guy, he was a bandit. Um, what should he? What should he do? This is kind of the one part where it slows down, trying to pick and decide which one I want to be. What kind of outsider is he? Did he go up? Did he get hired on for his, his rough exterior and make his way to the palace guard? Maybe. I think I'm gonna go with Hunter though. So he was an outsider, and then he made his living hunting. Perhaps all of his family were hunters, maybe tribesmen or something like that. So as a hunter, he gets 60 coins. He gets read tracks. And then each career or past experience gets a certain bonus. If you roll and get a 10 or higher, then you get whatever that bonus is. You get those things. All right, 8. So he gets 2 javelins. A fighting net. And a foxskin hat. Now that's pretty fancy. I'm just going to write that down right there. All right, now the next steps are basically quick background elements, right? You don't want to spend a lot of time fleshing this stuff out. Maybe if you're, bored and you're not holding up the game, maybe you could do all that stuff. But I'm not. I prefer short, concise kind of backgrounds, just enough to give you the hints of why your guy's here. So the first thing we do uh, for our background, well, we've already come up with kind of a background, but as far as our family background, we come up with our family relationship. 2-6 roll 7 has become involved in a secret or a political scandal. We'll just put political scandal. And these sheets, they don't come this this small. I made them. They're like full size sheets when you get them. I just made them this small for making my groups and practicing if I were going to do solo play or anything. Um, this 2-6 table 7 has, it was going to be what you hit the most, so it has become involved in a secret critical or secret criminal or political scandal. It would seem to me anyway that it'd be better to have a just so you can hit all of these more often instead of getting that one in the center there. Maybe using like an odd or even 2 columns with 1-6, 1-6 to figure out that relationship instead of this kind of curvy thing. Not a big deal, but just I'm kind of sometimes a game wonk, so I think about things like that, role distributions and all that stuff. All right, so family fortune. All right, so hire. than at present. So this one is, what their fortunes. So I'm just going to put a little up. It's higher. And then what happened next? A quick roll. 8. Incident in a battle. So there was some kind of incident in a battle that raised their fortunes. Maybe they, maybe they found, being as they're wanderers, maybe they found, they were scavenging the battlefield and came across some wealth or something. And appearance, just pick out a couple of things that make your guy stand out. All right, languages. They work on the number of they're based on your learning. The higher you're learning, the better you are at speaking, basically. So you can kind of choose to pick multiple languages at low if you have learning, or you can pick one or two languages at high. Just depends on what you want. All right, so now we would go on to the skills. This is probably the part of the game, or part of the rules that I don't want to say I have a problem with, but given that this is supposed to be a fast and a streamlined kind of minimalist game, I would prefer that the skills kind of all work the same. That they would have, like, if you have hiding, you get +2 on hiding rolls, or +2 on open lock, or +2 silent movement. But this is really more of a list of kind of attributes, feats, skills, and talents. What some games might call talents, because some of them just give you the ability to do something, which I don't mind. And there's no skill levels. You either have the skill or you don't, and I don't mind that either. But as far as, like, find direction, that just, you're able to do something. Desert travel, you're able to do something. Evade, you have to spend fate points. This one, you roll to see what happens. And they are not so complex that it's a really big problem, but a lot of that's just kind of my druthers. I prefer a skill list where things work the same, so I don't have to look things up. If you have a skill, then I prefer to be able to tell what it is. But this is that aside, this is a good mix of different skills. Some, like hiding. If someone's trying to seek you out, then they have a penalty to their fate roll when they're trying to search you. You have killing blows and killing shots, which allow you to do extra damage if you spend fate points. So, like I said, not really not any kind of deal breaker or anything like that, because they are pretty cool, and they do give a wide variety of stuff. But I really prefer, personally, more of a universal skill system, universal task system, than like Classic Traveler. It has the skills don't all do the same thing, whereas the newer versions, they do. And I'll admit, I prefer that. I'm kind of a grognard, but I prefer a more universal type system, mostly because I'm getting old and my brain can't hold can't hold those kind of things anymore. All right. Oh, you know what? Oh yeah, no, I did. I got my bonus there. All right, so next, I'm not gonna write it down, but you get a quick pack, and then here are the equipment that you can buy. I'm gonna get D6 times 20, 100, 120 extra, so I've got 180 to spend. Helm is always a good thing to give you 1 point of armor at least. We'll get to armor here in just a second. And He's got 2 javelins for throwing. I guess you could probably stab with those 2. Yeah, we'll just leave it at that. All right, and there is a reasonable list of other equipment gear that you can get. See, he's got a fancy fox hat. All right, so to get to our, oh, let me mark off his 100 for his helmet. All right, so combat. Combat is quick and pretty simple while offering some interesting choices. Basically, it's 2d6 versus 2d6 plus your combat rating. Your combat rating is equal to your might plus whatever your weapon is. Your weapon, each of those weapons gives you a skill bonus when you fight with it, right there, from +1 to +3. And then you compare the 2 results. The winner has the highest, so that means that unless they tie, somebody's going to get hit every round, barring armor. We'll get to that in a second. So there's not a lot of whiffing. Somebody is getting whacked, and you could even, if you wanted to get that going, because a tie could be they both miss, but you could play that as they both hit. Right? I've done historical fencing for a long time, and the double kill is very common. So you could have them hit each other, except that the damage is based directly on how much you beat that person by. So if you beat them by 4 points, or the winner, if the winner beats the loser by 4 points, they're going to do 4 points of damage. And that can result in some pretty wide, range of damage. If one person rolls a 2 and one rolls a 12, and they're exactly matched everything else, that's 10 points of damage. Most characters have, 17 would be the average, or would be right in the middle of the 2d6 plus 10. So you can see that it's possible that you could really get hit. And if you roll a double, if you roll a 12, then you actually get to roll another d6. So you could get 18. And assuming that you're evenly matched, you could hit someone for 16 points of damage in a single hit. And that, of course, gets adjusted. That changes if one person has a higher combat skill than the other. Now, in practice, it's kind of rare to get that big of a swing. Usually it's about 1 to 4, maybe, one side or the other. All right, so that's cool. It's an easy, simple way, and it gives you a lot of different results. A lot better than kind of the fighting fantasy. If you win, they take 2 hits. If you lose, you take 2 hits. And if you're playing solo, or if you're well, mostly if you're just playing solo, you can just find that differential. If they're evenly matched, they're just going to roll and compare. So the red guy would have gotten a 2, and the blue guy would have gotten a 5. So the red guy would have been hit for 1 point. And if one person, if they have skill, instead of, you can kind of front load the math by, instead of adding everyone's combat to their roll, just kind of figure out what the difference is. So if one guy is 3 points better than the other, then his die get +3 and the other guy's doesn't. So there's an 8 versus a 9. And then you start marking those hits down. Now, this is a pretty cool injury system. If you do 4 points or more, then you get a wound. And I think it's cool that you can get the wound before going, getting knocked out of the fight. Some systems you don't get the critical hit until you're on the ground bleeding, and that's like your final result or whatever. In this particular one, you can get hit and still be in the fight but wounded. So I like that a lot. We'll cover this here in a second. If your hits go down to 1 or 2, then you have a chance of collapsing because you're seriously wounded and whatnot. And 0, you're done. You're dead. All right. When you get these crippling blows, which is kind of what they call these, the wounds, you can spend fate points to you still have the wound, but you can spend the fate point to kind of ignore the effects of the wound during the fight. Kind of like an adrenaline rush, an adrenaline dump kind of thing. Now, there are 2 types of wounds, 2 types of crippling blows. There's wound, which is like 4 through 10 points. And then you have a maiming, which is 8 through 20 points, which are the same hit locations, but these ones are maim versus wound. And these ones take longer to heal and have more significant effects. The way this is written on how to use it is a little confusing because it talks about, well, if you double your points, then you can, if you have a 5, you get the arm, but you can double your points for a 10 and you get a more severe thing in the arm. When really what it's trying to say is you can roll high, whatever it is, and then you can do anything below it. So if you get an 8, you can select any of these, anything that's 8, or anything below. Now you can adjust what you're hitting because you may want to say you'd rather hit this guy in the leg because if he's hitting the leg, he can't do a feint maneuver. Something like that. You may choose to hit this guy in the arm instead because that reduces his attack dice. And so it's kind of cool that you get to pick those things. But really, instead of worrying about having double the amount or anything, you just start high and then you can select anything going down. And there may be times when you really just want, it may be more advantageous for you to select something lower. There's a really cool push your luck mechanic, where you can save the amount of damage that you get. So say you hit somebody and you generate 4 points of damage. You can save those 4 points of damage and apply it to the next hit. So if you get another 4 points, you succeed next round, and you get 4 points of damage, then you can carry those 4 points over and get an 8. Now, and you can do that forever, so it is really a push your luck mechanic. But if you lose a round while you're holding it, then you lose all your points. And if you choose to do something less, then if you had 8 points and you choose to do only 4, then you get to carry those 4 points over as well. And that's pretty cool. So you can, because it considers it that you're feinting and getting in position and moving here, and going in for like a super killing blow. But like in this situation here, if you get your leg cut, it's assumed you can't do that. So that might be why you would choose to do a lesser leg hit than something else. But it's pretty cool. I like that. Work. Okay, so recovering hits. The way armor works is pretty simple. I like it. It's a dice pool mechanic. And I like the dice pool aspect of it because you can have someone with a lot of armor who is not necessarily going to be invulnerable. So the way it works is for every piece of armor that they have, it gives them an armor value. You roll 1 die per armor value. Oh, any 6 that you roll means that your armor has stopped all the damage. And that helps, that definitely helps mitigate some of those super big hits. And it works pretty well because you can have someone who has a whole bunch of armor. And even if you have, if you get to roll 4 dice, 5 dice, or whatever, there's still a chance. Well, for me especially, there's a there's a pretty good chance that I'm going to not make that roll and they're going to get through. But it's pretty cool. I like it because it gives a wider range of results without making things um, without jamming things up. If you have a game and I like armor absorption games, but if you have a game where they have a high armor value and you finally hit them, and then their armor absorbs all the damage, it tends to slow things down. Not so much here. Although, if they keep rolling 6s, then yes, then I guess it's kind of the same thing. Unarmed combat basically works the same way, but it has stuns in there instead of hits, or stuns and hits. But it has its own table for those advanced hits. Another thing about the advanced hits is that there's very few things that, like this right here in 18, you sever their hand. There are very few monsters that have anywhere near 18 hit points. So you're going to kill them all pretty much before you get your hand severed, or before you sever their hand. And same with people. Most of your characters are not going to have, or well, I say most, but a lot of your characters are not going to have 18. They're going to be dead before they get 18 to cut their hand off. So it is kind of cool, but some of these higher level ones, I don't know if you'd ever reach that. There's only like three or four monsters that have enough hits for that to even be relevant. All right, missile combat. This is one of those cases where it's not actually, it's not a 10 or higher. It's a 12 or higher. You roll 2 dice 6, add your might, 12 or higher, and your missile hits. It has a base damage of 2, plus whatever you roll over 12. Okay. One of the things, I really like this rule, this hit by an arrow rule, where it's assuming that if you get hit by an arrow, then it's stuck in you, and it's affecting how you fight. It's affecting how you're able to carry on, and I do like that. That's pretty cool. And if you can try to pull it out without medical aid, then you take one more hit. So that's a pretty cool little rule. I like that. It makes even if the arrows are not maybe doing as much damage as a sword might in a sword fight, it has that side effect that it's sticking in you and it's messing you up. And I guess you could probably do something like that with the the javelin too, or anything else that gets stuck in you. One thing that I found missing here is you have range bands and modifiers for being, in or outside the range band, but there's no movement. There's no movement. At least I did not find it. Maybe it's in here somewhere, but I did not find an actual movement rate for characters in combat. You pick one action, but I did not see anything where it says you can move up to. And I mean, I can make up my own. I've played long enough, but I don't know 50 meters. How many rounds do I have to run at this guy if I want to close the distance? I don't know. All right. And then here are some other things for different types of situations. The multiple opponents thing is pretty cool. Whoever is outnumbered, let's say a character, a PC, he's fighting 2 warriors. He makes his roll and he picks who he's going to attack. All right, 6. Whoops. 6, and we'll say his combat is 5. So for a total of 15, or a total of 9. All right, let me try that again. All right, so 6. If we add 5, that's 11. Sorry. Good grief. All right, so that's 11. So that's his combat round. His combat value is 11 for the whole round for everybody he's fighting. So if he's fighting somebody else, okay, that guy got to say a 4, 5, 6, 7. So he beat him, but now he's got his buddy over here, and he got a 6, 7, 8. So he beat him, but you can only do one attack per turn. If you beat the other guy, that just means you defended yourself. All right. And I didn't realize it was so late that I'm having trouble adding adding 2d6. But you get the gist. You roll 1 for your entire combat round, and then everybody is compared to that. If you're in a situation, say, where you're only defending, if you win, that just means you stop the attack. All right. Here are some advantages that you can go for to, kind of give you a little more tactical, give you some more tactical options on the field. All right. Now, fate. Oh, okay. We'll start with spirits. Fighting spirits. The spirits are given fate stats instead of might stats. So when you're doing that, you're making opposed rolls using your fate attribute, and instead of like losing hits in the same way, there's a different procedure. It basically attacks. You lose hit points, but it's, instead of like being a differential, it works a little bit different. And so you're fighting like more of a psychic battle with the ghosts. And most of the time, you can't really do anything to them. Even if you win, they just dissipate or whatever. But it's kind of cool because it's a spiritual battle, um, a psychic battle instead of a physical one. And then fate, you can use fate as the stat, as I said before. So you would roll it to get out of the way of the arrow trap or whatever. But you can also spend it as a meta currency. But when you spend it as meta currency, you actually have to perform sacrifices to get it back. You have to get the will of the gods back. So you can use them, but not only do you have to sacrifice to get them back, now your fate is lower. So if you make a test, say to jump out of the way of that boulder that keeps coming down every time I talk about fate, then now you have a lower fate roll, or a lower fate stat, which makes your roll lower. And then here's our experience points. Tasks are the 2d6 plus your attribute, whether it's craft or learning or might or fate, against a 10. Here's a random travel rate, and some other things talking about how to do moving silently, theft, sanity. Some creatures have a terror rating, and you have to see what happens. You may be crazy. Now, being a sword and sorcerer game, a pulp fantasy game, sorcerers and the priests of cults are generally the bad guys. But here are rules for making sorcerers if you want to. Similar to the other one, but a couple of the stats are just different is all. Now this uses a freeform magic system where you basically describe what you want your spell to do based on the domain that you're trying to invoke. There's not a list of spells, which I like that. I like that idea pretty well, but I think it definitely could have used a couple of examples, a couple more examples of the different types of spells that people might try to cast. You know, because some of them are described as being fate rolls, you know, opposed fate rolls, but not all of them. And it's left vague because it is free form, but I think it definitely could have used a couple of more examples. You basic and you when you're casting a spell, there's no spell slots, whatever. It costs you hits. It costs you your life force. The gods want your life force to break the rules of the universe. Um, and so you have spell difficulty and the effects, and it really is to be between the GM and the player to not negotiate necessarily, but come up with what those effects are. So effect, range, duration, things that might increase the difficulty. All right, demon stones are used for powering things. Potions, scrolls, priests. They have their own rituals that work pretty similarly. Religious amulets. They're cool because you can charge them up at a temple or whatever and use them to pay for to replenish your fate points. All right, here's a monster list. Pretty good, pretty decent monster list. They're standard fare: griffins, rats, giant rats, hippogriffs, manticores, all that typical, but pretty extensive list. They have a easy stat block, might, hits, their attacks. This is the number of the attacks that they can, the number of different targets they can attack each round. If they have 2 attacks, then they and only fighting one person, then they don't get to gang up those attacks. Which I kind of like that. I kind of like that idea. See, here's what I was talking about with the hits. You know, a lot of these guys, a troll has 14 hits. They're supposed to be, the big monster, but the heroes are usually going to have more than 14 hits. It's and so for the criticals, anything above a 14 that is never going to apply to this guy. Here's demons and spirits. The monsters and creatures, some of them are described as having special effects, like if they roll doubles, and I like that. That's a pretty cool. That's a pretty cool system too. Treasure, magic weapons, pretty standard stuff there. And here are some scrolls in the back that do actually have some examples of the spells, what you might kind of come up with. All right, in the adventure section, there's no charts for generating like what's in a hex or what's in a room or anything like that. But it discusses a lot of different labyrinths, areas to explore. Um, and it has some pretty good ideas and a pretty decent list of the things that you can do there. Same thing with traps and triggers. No generator or encounter maker for them, but a good list of how they get tripped up. There's your wilderness. Here encounters and interesting locations, but no tables, and that's fine. And this is how to make your map. And we do start getting some encounter tables though, based on terrain type, and we have a good number of those. And then in the cities as well, cities and villages. And then here's a a very traveler-esque patrons and patron mission. So this is cool because you may not have any generators for other stuff, but here is a generator for job offers. Who's offering it? What do they want? What's the target? NPCs gives a quick it gives a quick creation and then a really quick creation where it just has a couple of stat blocks, and that's one of the good things about this type of system. You don't need a lot of information for the NPC. These are kind of the noobs, so you can increase their stats. This is what it rolls, or this is how the little process over here on this page, whether they're commoner types or professional types, and then here is just a list of a bunch of NPCs. So if you needed to talk to a healer, or you needed to beat up a nomad or beat up a housekeeper, then you just pull one of these out and use them for all sorts of stuff. And then a pretty cool and brutal mass battle system. There's a little system for character participation, and it's pretty brutal too. An appendix with names for lots of stuff and a character sheet. And then there's the back with the list. There's our desert theme showing back up. All right, and that is Zozer Games Clash of Steel. I'll put all the links down in the bottom. My final thoughts on it are that it's really a fun game. I like the speed of it. I like the level, the balance of minimalist versus extra rules and options. I think that's good, and I like the combat system because it's very quick and it's very deadly, and I like being able to, for people to have injuries and still be in the fight. So I think it's very descriptive, and everything else, the stats are simple to keep track of. Like I said, I probably will, when I'm using it, I'll probably come up with a more simplified, if you have the skill, you get a +2 kind of system. But I love the game. It's another great product by Zozer, by Paul Elliott. So I hope you pick it up and support the guy that I like to support. And happy gaming.